Hello, folks, and welcome to the Know Better Be Better podcast, a conversation about health and wellness, where we explore various topics to increase our knowledge and understanding in order to grow holistically. I'm Daron Raynor.
And I'm Dani Ondreka, and today we're talking about wellness, specifically the 7 pillars that make up overall wellness. We kind of thought in a podcast about health and wellness, we should probably discuss what wellness actually is, and then we can dive into what it looks like in everyday practice.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start right away with this. Before we even get into these 7 pillars, the big question is, what exactly is wellness? It's used so loosely, it's used so frequently, but do we really know exactly what wellness is in its true context?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from the get-go, when we even said wellness, when we mentioned it to begin with, every single person listening just thought of something. You thought of a green image. You thought of somebody who has incredibly chiseled abs, someone who walks every morning and is, very, very distinct in their habits. And I think we typically do think about it in that physical aspect, those things that we're doing every single day, but really it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's self-care, but it's in a much bigger scale than what we limit it to, especially in this physical vein aspect of our own life, where it's more than, like you say, it's more than a face mask. It's more than
going to get a massage.
Yeah, a massage or some sort of like self-care. It is self-care, but it's bigger. That's what we're looking at.
It's comprehensive self-care.
Exactly. So we have the definition right here. According to the World Health Organization, it says that wellness is a state of complete mental, social, and physical well-being, and not just the absence of infirmity or disease. That's something that we have to really focus on, as well as we do put a limit to wellness rather than allow wellness to be a continuum.
Right.
Where it's, I'm better today. And then many times we just stop there and we carry on, rather than I'm better today. Let me be better tomorrow than I was today, and better today than I was yesterday.
It's not being stagnant. It's not saying, oh, I'm just not sick, so I'm fine. I'm pretty well.
It's a journey, right?
Right, yeah.
And so another definition here that we're looking at is it's an active pursuit of health in all aspects of mental, physical, and social parameters. And I like that word, active.
This is my favorite one.
It's a constant thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like we've been saying, it doesn't stay stagnant. It doesn't hit a point of just stop and stay and stare. Rather, it's, I keep going. I don't look back. If I do look back, it's more so to see how far I've come on the journey.
Absolutely.
But I keep going. I keep striving forward.
I love that.
And in order to be active, what is this thing that we must have?
Awareness, 100%. So being able to take a look at yourself and your life, the things that you do, the things that you think, who you interact with, all of those things involve your wellness. I mean, there are so many different kinds, which we'll obviously get into, but being able to look at what you're doing in your own life and kind of diagram that, understand why you do the things that you do, and be able to change because of that knowledge, I think is huge. And that's, in essence, wellness. So we've talked about before introspection and retrospection as we've had conversations on this podcast. And really, that's exactly what it is. Being able to look internally, look at your own mental and emotional processes, be reflective, examine your thoughts and your feelings, and then go from there.
Yeah, they say, we've heard this quote before, like you have to know where you've come from in order to know where you're going.
Yeah.
And that's a very important aspect to remember when it comes to this thing of wellness and this journey of wellness, especially when we look at these 7 pillars. What I would like the listeners to really focus on as we bring out these 7 pillars of wellness is be introspective and be retrospective. See where you've come from, or even look into your own family history of things that you may, that may be a strength or may be a struggle, and even look into your own life, personal, your own heart. As I say, do some heart searching and take a look at yourself and see, where am I at? Where do I want to be? And what can I do to actively seek to achieve that goal? Which that goal never really stops. As soon as you achieve that, there's the next goal,
That there is the most important part. You don't stop. I think it's really easy to look in the past and get really bogged down by things that you maybe aren't so proud of, thoughts in your head that you maybe aren't so proud of, feelings that you're like, I don't like that about myself. So you can't get stuck there. You have
Right.
to stay moving forward. And you use those pieces, you use those clues and that evidence to kind of form where you're going.
And it's new. It's always changing. It never really, it's not a repeat of the same thing. Like they say, like madness is repeating the same thing, expecting the same results.
Yeah.
You know, so it's always evolving. It's always changing, but it's changing for the better.
Yes.
But ultimately, what we want to focus on is trying to bring awareness through the form of introspection and retrospection, right?
Yes. We'll look at these 7 things and they are going to be very, very broad. So I think each person is going to figure out what they need to take from it. Whatever is relevant to you, you'll kind of hold on to. So that's something to remember as we discuss.
Yeah. And in future episodes, we're going to tap on each pillar and go more in depth with more questions. We have a podcast coming up with Jane Key on nutrition and food and mood. We have other types of podcasts that we plan to use with different types of experts in those pillars to give us better insight in this journey that we call wellness.
Because everything kind of has a hub under each of these pillars. Every piece of wellness fits under one of these pillars, if that kind of makes sense.
Absolutely.
We're giving them all a home.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Yes. All right. Are we all ready?
I think we're ready.
Okay. So we have our first pillar. And when we bring up these 7 pillars, we're going to look at the most inward and we're going to see how they all influence each other to cause this ripple effect in our life. Okay. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about is physical wellness.
This is what we all think of the most.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the bigger ones we do think of because it is things that we can control. It's what we take in. It's the things that we do every day. It's your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep, your hygiene, all very controllable factors, habits that you participate in every single day. And what's most important about these things is your input really does affect your output. So what you're putting in is directly affecting what you're putting out.
And we talk about that. Let's look at one of the easier things like diet. You know, if you decide you're going to put a triple cheeseburger in your system, are you instantly motivated to go and exercise later? Probably not. You're more interested in maybe taking a nap, if that,
Right.
or sitting around. And then what happens? You get into that vicious cycle where once you gained a little bit of energy back from your maybe unhealthy eating, you decide to go further, eat another unhealthy thing. And then next thing you know, a day, week, year goes by, and then you see that other areas in that physical pillar have been left or neglected, where you're not getting good sleep, you're not exercising consistently, all of these different types of things. So like you said, your input definitely affects your output. It's more than just, oh yeah, if I go to the gym X amount of days a week, I'm well. You know, it's really checking yourself before you wreck yourself physically and seeing, am I doing the most to give my body a fighting chance for the future? Now, it's not necessarily you're exercising or you're doing things out of fear for the future, but rather you're trying to set yourself up for a more productive and proactive lifestyle. Starting now, all the way down the road to maybe when life ends for the individual, you know?
Yes. And I like that it's more than just what you eat and how you move. The fact that it encompasses sleep and hygiene as well, like those are care things right there. I mean, a lot of people, I think, in society nowadays do think about what they eat. They do think about their exercise or their lack thereof, because that's thrown in their face all the time by media and by the exercise industry. But when you think about someone who actually takes the time to get good sleep, grooms themselves very, very well, that's a person who truly cares about themselves. And I would say that's a fairly well person.
Yeah, it starts with what I can control, I'm going to give the best to, simply put. That's all.
And they
that's really what it
do
comes down
bleed
to.
into each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of bleeding into each other, we're going to look at how this physical wellness really kind of does bleed into our next pillar, which is this emotional mental wellness.
Yes. Yeah. So our emotional or mental wellness, that pillar, it's defined as respecting the feelings of others and yourself, managing your emotions in a constructive way, and working to feel positive and enthusiastic about your life. And my favorite part of this is that it's not just respecting your own feelings, it's thinking about the feelings of others. It's growing that empathy.
When we really look at our health and our wellness journey, especially from the physical standpoint, going back to it, we do see how that is linked to our mental and emotional health,
100%.
So if an individual is maybe lacking in sleep or they're lacking in the things that they can control, then those other factors, looking at our mental and emotional health, can be negatively affected, or they can be positively affected. They kind of link themselves together. But I really like how you talked about it's managing your emotions in a constructive way. Now, one can go through many exercises of like breathing exercises, and those are very, very relevant for sure. It also helps to have that firm foundation from the physical pillar to carry over into our mental and emotional pillar.
Yeah, they're absolutely related. And thinking about managing those emotions constructively also comes back to that introspection point, right? You need to kind of know what's there to be able to know how to fix it or try to approach it in a different way. For some people, that's therapy for them, being able to talk to someone who is outside of their experiences and being able to be introspective by using another person to sort of comb through all of those thoughts and feelings and really give them action items.
Yeah, I like this list that we have here of identifying the stressors, that challenge your mental health or cause it to decline. Talk about the struggles you're having with a trustworthy person, identifying a particular feeling you are having, and work to pinpoint that root cause. That is a really, really big one. I think especially we look in our society today, we're still in a pandemic. It's not post-COVID. We're still very much in the COVID world. But we see how in the spring of 2020, things really shifted and how things really flipped, how the world flipped for many people.
Yes.
People who had these maybe mental and emotional traumas, it finally came out because the things that they had distracting them were no longer there. They couldn't see family maybe to distract them. They couldn't go to work to maybe distract them. So now they're stuck with themselves and their own thoughts.
We saw extremes.
We did, exactly. And I remember I took a poll of a few individuals that I spoke to, and I asked them, what is one thing that you think society desperately needs out of the 7 pillars? If there was one pillar that could be fixed, everything would be fixed. Majority of them said the mental emotional pillar. And I found that very interesting because we know that that is a big thing that was brought awareness, but we have not known the magnitude that it can have on a whole society. And I think we're seeing that as well. So it is important if one, even when you're well, as we talked about, going to the gym, for instance, if we would consider ourselves healthy individuals from that standpoint where we exercise consistently, but we're not exercising because of crisis. And that's the thing is when it comes to mental and emotional wellness, don't wait for crisis to hit before you seek help. Okay.
Absolutely.
Find people that are trustworthy, as we said, identify stressors in life, and even look to pinpoint the root cause of different types of feelings that we're having. Right. And that doesn't have to happen once crisis happens. That can be just any day, all day. And that's that thing of mindfulness that many people speak of. I think that's another thing is what exactly is mindfulness? Well, it's being able to kind of sit back, pause, and be observant and be present, So while you're well, take care of yourself. It's
emotional maturity, honestly.
Absolutely.
I mean, being able to diagram something like that shows a lot of emotional maturity. And that's on a continuum as well. We don't ever really reach like the pinnacle of emotional maturity. But I mean, like, when's the last time you got in a tiff with somebody, like your roommate or your significant other, and you sat down and you were like, oh, I really want to diagram the root cause of that. You know what I mean? Like, do we really do that in real life? But maybe that's something we should do.
Absolutely. And this perfectly carries us over into that third pillar, because I want you to keep that point. Social and relational wellness. Before we even get into that, just what you mentioned there really brought to light this thought where a lot of times our social and relational issues and struggles in life stem from something that was maybe a mental and emotional trauma that happened years ago. A lot of times we try and pinpoint the individual as the problem that we're dealing with. And we try to pinpoint their action as the problem, but rather it's an experience that we may have had And what that individual did is a trigger that brought back all of these emotions. So then when we have the trigger, we look at the individual and we're like, oh, you're the enemy. Rather, it's not that they're the enemy. It's just going back to this mental emotional. I need to take care of this thing and try and pinpoint exactly what it is so that when these things come, I know how to handle it.
Well, we all have emotional bias. So I think that's why empathy is so important as well, because when you think about any relationship you have with another person, they have an entirely different set of circumstances and emotional biases than you do, you know? So they're coming from a completely different place. So if they're angry about something, it's generally not about you. I mean, maybe you really did something to irritate them, but that irritation is rooted somewhere else. So I think it gives you a lot of compassion when you think about your interaction with other people, and that can help your outcome so greatly.
Absolutely. It's being able to connect. That's really what it is. And being able to connect, not just on a superficial scale, but to connect and allow people's experiences to be their own, while also allowing your experience to be a part of their life so that you guys can all give and take and be a part of each other. And that helps to strengthen that social wellness pillar. So here's some tips. We talked about finding a connection with others. Everyone has somebody that they can connect with. There is somebody for everybody, as they say. And that's not just from the dating and marriage world. That's just from the world of human relationships. We were meant to have relationships with people.
Thank goodness there's someone who's just as weird as you are.
Absolutely. There you go. I like that. There's maintaining healthy relationships and enjoying being around others, developing friendships and intimate relationships, and caring about others and letting them care about you as well.
Yes. Accept that love.
Yes. It's this thing of companionship. And I really like this, this thing that when we were talking about this before off air, when we talked about this thing of companionship, friendship is good. Friendship is good, but it seems like the word friendship has been, in a way, relegated down to something that's more of just acquaintance.
Overused, yeah. Oh, my friend, you know, has a business and does such and such. You've met them one time. Are they your friend?
Yeah, you know, your friend is there to be there with you thick and thin, and that doesn't always equal a positive thing. You know, your friends are people who don't just co-sign with everything in life. Your friends will be honest with you. It's not that they have to hurt your feelings, so therefore they're my friend, but they are looking for the absolute best in you. They help you with your introspection and your retrospection. They help you take action in your wellness journey. They help you say, I don't know about that. Or they help you say, you're great. I think you can handle that. Or I think you're capable. It's that healthy balance.
Well, there exactly is the difference. It comes from love. It comes from a place of love. It's not just judgment to judge because you don't like what somebody is doing. It's because you care about them and you want to see them go high. You know, you want to see them go to that positive place. You don't want to see them go low and be down in the trenches based on a decision that they made. You want more for them. That comes from a place of care. Absolutely.
It's a companionship.
Yeah.
So I would almost want to take the word friendship out and replace it with companionship, just because that's essentially what true friendship is. It is a companionship, but just using the word companionship it seems to hold a little bit more weight there because friendship has been used so loosely. There's a quote that I think of where it's, and I don't want to butcher it too much, but it's, you know, don't walk in front of me, don't walk behind me, but just walk beside me and be my friend. And that's the aspect of sharing that experience together.
Yeah.
When you're down, your friend is beside you to pick you up. When your friend is down, you're beside them to pick them up. And you both strive to keep going forward, keep motivating each other,
together,
keep pushing each other. It's a togetherness, absolutely.
Yeah. You don't want to be ahead of them or behind them. You desire to be next to them. I think that's a really special thing.
A great way to help build this social pillar is also contributing to the community around you. As a group, going out and doing different acts of community service. Any type of service kind of helps to, in a way, any type of service solidifies all pillars. But this social pillar especially in the world that we're living in today, going out and taking care of other people. A lot of people, if we jump back to this mental emotional pillar, again, see how it all bleeds together. There are people who now more than ever need companionship. You know, going out and serving them, not going out and just being a friend to them, but a friendship through service, looking out for the best in them, not looking for anything in return, that can help build up some of these other people's pillars. And in return, your social pillar gets built up as well.
Yes. And that person that you're loving on does not have to be in your inner circle. They don't have to be your best friend, your companion, right? Like we said, you can love people at arm's length. And you should absolutely be loving people outside of your inner circle. That will build your social wellness. But it's okay if they're not your flavor, that you still love them, but maybe you just stand over here. You're a couple more feet away from them, and that's okay. That's fine.
And it's funny because we kind of keep them separate, but this brings us to our next pillar, where this aspect of serving and intellectual, they kind of seem a bit
intellectual
polarized,
wellness.
But yet the true intellectuals are the ones that serve, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not trying to get
We're getting deep.
extra with it, but you know what I mean?
Are you a true intellectual?
The question is, especially if we're going to bleed these things together, and how we set our physical wellness really influences our emotional and mental wellness, which then can be a strong influence on our social wellness of the friends that we attract, or the friends that we desire, or the friends that we obtain. And now it kind of even goes into this thing called the intellectual wellness. You know, they say, like, you are a reflection of your friend group, or your friends are a reflection of you. You know, it goes both ways.
My mom always used to tell me growing up, and I always took it so negatively, but she was right. Aren't they always right? Terrible. Yeah. She always used to say, especially when I was in high school, like, look at where your friends are going, right? Do you see their trajectory? And do you want to go there too? And I'd be like, Mom, like, she's so nice. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're seeing. She was right literally every single time. But it's true, you know, like, do you see where they're going, and do you want to be there next to them where they're going? Do you want that for yourself? Right.
And I think when I think of that, especially as we're older and more mature, you know, before we didn't really take that, because
now we're more introspective.
Yeah, you're instantly thinking, oh, I have to get rid of these friends, but rather it's almost a challenge that the parents or elders or the seniors are trying to give to you, in the sense of, hey, there's more that you could be doing than what your friends are currently doing. You could be a catalyst of change to that friend group, you know?
Yeah.
But it does require, like, hey, let's be introspective and retrospective and look at our trajectory, as you said, and see, where are we going? And if I don't like where I'm going, okay, I need to extract myself and kind of build my own wellness pillars for myself, and then be an influence on the other people that are around me. And hopefully they want to change their trajectory too.
I definitely took it as a challenge, but I think more to prove her wrong than anything.
Right. Absolutely. So intellectual is...
Anyway.
It's expanding your knowledge and skills continuously. Maintaining a hunger. I like that word. It's maintaining a hunger for knowledge and learning new things, sharing your gifts and your knowledge with others.
We're not staying stagnant again.
Exactly.
We're staying hungry.
And it's more than just reading a book. Reading a book is phenomenal. I can't tell you how reading some books has helped me, because I hate reading. But it wasn't until I tried to start reading that introspection and retrospection started to actually become more prevalent in my own lifestyle. So reading is essential, but it's not just relegated to reading a book.
Yes. And that's actually the number one answer that people give when you ask them about intellectual wellness or how they're taking care of it. We actually took this concept to an event a few months ago down in Cincinnati. Really, really large event at the banks. So hundreds, thousands of people are there, and we're asking them questions about wellness. And everyone was like, oh, well, I read sometimes, or I should read more. Like, it was so baseline. It was so simple. And we're sitting there like, no, but here's what we want you to understand. Like, there's more to it than that. So here's my absolute favorite part of this. Being willing to hear others' viewpoints and treating them with respect, which I think is major in today's society, where we just love, especially on media, to throw out what we're feeling. And if someone disagrees, oh my gosh, well, I just cannot stand Sally. She's the worst. She disagreed with me, you know? And again, we have different emotional biases, right? We were raised in different ways. We have had different experiences. You are not going to think the same way as somebody else. But isn't that a beautiful thing? Because it challenges you. It challenges you to think about things in a different way. that grows you more than anything else, I think.
Yeah, it helped, like building that intellectual wellness or that wisdom.
You know? Oh, wisdom. Okay.
Yeah, they say wisdom knows when to speak and when not to speak.
Yes.
Essentially. But even when it comes to when to speak and when not to speak, wisdom always has understanding with it, which is that intellectual bit. Just like you said, it's expanding our knowledge and skills. How? By being willing to hear others.
Right. You don't have to agree with Sally.
Yes.
It is not your job to make Sally agree with you.
Yes.
You are just fine.
But in a way, it helps you to, and we jump back again to the social pillar. It helps you to see people where they're at. Because a lot of times people who may disagree with you, it's okay. They may have strong arguments, and your job is not to convince them to be like you. We don't need more of, I know we don't need more of me in the world.
There is one you, and you're awesome at it. Okay?
Exactly. But what you can do is, by understanding where their experience comes from, understanding who they are, it allows you to kind of separate the two negatives and see them for the positive individual that they are. And then you can learn lessons from their life.
Yeah, you might really learn something from what they have to say. And if you're just sitting, you know, so determined that you're not going to hear a word that they're saying, I mean, what's the point in that? That sounds kind of exhausting, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, and I think that was the point of one of the points of human relationships, is to be able, it's a give and take, especially of this thing of intellectual wellness. It's not to sit here and I'm talking to you and it's like, well, you're just not as smart as me, or you don't, you're not as wise as me, or you're not.
Yeah, it's a pride thing.
It is a pride thing. It's putting one's pride aside and being able to see them for them, hear them for them, and then allow them to teach you a lesson. That is a big question I would ask many people is, are you learning lessons from the conversations that you're having with people, whether it be small or big, or even the lessons of just observing, sometimes watching people and seeing there's something about their character that I could probably take for my character.
Absolutely. This last part, I think actually might be my favorite. I might have lied about the other one. Allowing yourself to be wrong and be corrected.
Ooh. Wow.
Oof.
You might have struck a nerve there. I will tell you right away that is one of my personal flaws that I'm trying to grow in.
I think we all just collectively took a breath after I read that statement.
Putting my pride aside, because I'm so used to, and this is why it's dangerous to live in a bubble. This is something that I have, in a fortunate way, I've had a tight-knit social bubble, but I've also limited myself from understanding, seeing, and hearing other people's experiences that can help grow me intellectually. Yes. It doesn't mean you're just extracting any information everywhere, because then that can lead to confusion, but rather being able to say, whoa, I thought this, I was wrong, and now I understand more. And then what you get from that is you get a testimony with that. So you can go from what you once thought to what you think now. Now you can go to people who think that way, and you can reach them, because now it's like, hey, I was in your shoes.
Now you relate.
And now
Relational wellness.
It takes us back to that social. You see, folks, how it all bleeds together into one thing.
100%.
But yes, that is one of the most overlooked things of intellectual wellness, is being wrong, understanding that you're wrong, and being willing to make a change.
And it's hard when you're a consumer of media.
Yeah.
Especially how we see social media nowadays. If you've watched any of the documentaries on, social media and how they create what you see, it's curated, which is such a terrifying thing to me. It literally learns your behaviors by what you read, what you comment on, what you engage with the most, and then it shows you more of that thing that you engaged with. So you're never getting to see the big full picture. You're only getting to see people that agree with what you think. So you're never actually getting that growth, which is also why it's so important to be in person with people, to be in personal connection, because that's not curated. There's no computer somewhere that is relegating the person that's in front of you to only say these things. They are there to challenge you personally in real time.
Absolutely. It takes us to that point of being okay with being wrong. And
Yeah.
it's interesting how we talk about this thing called culture shock, where you go to another country and you may see things are totally different. Something small, like driving on the opposite side of the road.
Mhm.
Something big, like how people interact. But we never really thought like, oh, I don't interact by maybe kisses on the cheek or something like that. But we're within our own space, our own culture, this thing that you mentioned of the media, especially where it kind of tailors everything to you, it just causes you to dive deeper and deeper into self, so that the moment that you meet somebody who is the slightest difference, it feels like you're in another country. Not only that, but it's like, this is an enemy of mine.
That's isolating.
Yeah.
I mean, we wonder why we have so many issues with mental health nowadays. We are so isolated within our own realm of thought. And maybe that's exactly what we need to fix it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Being challenged by other people and allowing yourself to be wrong.
Mm-hmm. And also being a challenge. Because, part of that.
Part of being a companion.
Part of being a companion is being willing to challenge other people,
yes.
Appropriately. It starts with love. It starts with love, and being able to find other people's good so that they can trust you before you can give something of a swift response to somebody.
Find somebody's good. I really love that. I struggled with mental health a few years ago, and a good friend of mine told me one actionable thing to do every day was to just find one good thing. Mm-hmm. So I love that you say that. Like, we can find one good thing about every day. We can also find at least one good thing about every person.
Exactly. And allow them to be them, so that when you give something that may be intellectually challenging, they don't feel small. They don't feel less than, but rather they feel that they have a space to grow with you or around you, Did
we just solve all of humanity's problems?
I wish. If only. But we see how so many of these tiny fixes, and these are small fixes, people. Mm-hmm. These aren't fixes that require 7 steps and, clap 3 times. This is not a 12-step like program. It's not something that is rigid. It's a fluid thing, but it's going back to a willingness to be introspective, retrospective, so that we build this awareness and then have an active pursuit of doing better. That's really what it is. We talk about this, know better so that we can be better. That's really what we're coming down to.
I love it. You just wrapped it all up in a nice little bow, and we're not even done yet.
So let's get to this next pillar. There's this thing called occupational. And I think this is, as we said, folks, we're starting inward. We started with physical. We worked outwards to emotional and further out to social, intellectual. And occupational is further outside.
Yeah, bigger circle.
Exactly. And we need to recognize that, because occupational, many times we allow to be the central thing. We allow that first over our mental and emotional health. We allow that first over our physical health. We allow that over our social and relational health. Mm-hmm. And we even allow it to stunt us in our intellectual growth sometimes. I like this quote. I think you actually put it down. My occupation is not who I am.
Yeah.
I bring who I am to my occupation.
Yeah.
It's something where the way that it's defined here is preparing for and participating in work that gives you personal satisfaction, taking pride in your work, contributing your unique gifts and skills to work that is meaningful and rewarding. And I really, really, really can't nail that home enough, because we sometimes allow ourselves to just accept any occupation because money or something like that. We say, oh, well, the money's good, so I'm not going to change it up, or I'm not going to do something that actually is fulfilling,
Well, and you can be fulfilled in a lot of things as well. I think that's an attitude problem. You could be a janitor and take a lot of great personal satisfaction in the work that you do, because you come to work and you do a really good job and you take pride in doing a good job.
Yeah. It comes down to where are my skills? Where do my skills allow me to flourish in work? Now, granted, when we take care of our physical, emotional, mental, social, and intellectual wellness, there is a way that we can walk into any occupation and make ourselves comfortable.
Yes.
But it's being able to focus on those things first so that we can carry it into our occupation.
And bring
not
your
allowing the
best.
occupation exactly
Yeah, bring
to
your
be
best
the
to your job.
central thing. Yeah, you have to. Mediocre work will give mediocre results,
Yeah.
and that's the simple thing. And also it'll bring out mediocre satisfaction ratings for your own personal feelings of work. If you can walk in and put your best foot forward because of all these other wellness pillars that are being well considered, I won't say well taken care of because we know it's a fluid continuum. So we'll talk about that later. But when we can take the time to allow these pillars to be present, then our occupation can be a bit more rewarding. And also it opens the door to what do I need to do for a living, or where are my skills best suited?
Yeah.
Because in our intellectual wellness, we start to figure out what our skills are. In observing our social and relational wellness, we see more of where our skills are aligned and where our skills fall in.
Where they're really at work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being into our mental and emotional stage, looking at what things do I do that kind of brings me some reward and satisfaction. And even like, what can I do that will allow me to stay on top of my physical health too?
Yes.
That kind of helps to narrow down even what do I want to do for a living, And like you said, it may be something that does not pay well. It may be something that does pay well. But one thing that we can note is that when you are in the career path that you're supposed to be in, the satisfaction will follow.
Yes. And we talked about self-concept. So no one can be the best you. We can look at it here. No one else can bring what you can to the table at your workplace. You have a unique set of skills that literally no one else has.
Yeah.
So bring those. I mean, bring your best. Bring every skill you have to the table and use it and take pride in that. That's such an amazing thing that you're able to do.
That's another thing. Don't dumb yourself down. You're in the position that you're in. There are many people who meet the criteria that is on the quote unquote help wanted ad.
Yeah.
But you're there for a purpose. You're there to be the best you for somebody else. Somebody is there that needs a you.
Yes.
That's the best way to put it. Somebody is in that same job as you that needs someone like you to help them in their wellness journey.
Yes. And I want to come back to that quote one more time. My occupation is not who I am. I bring who I am to my occupation. Because I think a lot of times we let what we do for a living define us. When you meet a person for the very first time, what's the first thing they ask you? What do you do for a living?
Yeah.
And we feel like we need to launch into this whole like world-changing spiel about how everything we do is so amazing to elevate ourselves, right? To feel good about what we do. Well, what if we came into conversations and we asked, wow, how is your relationship with your family? Like, what is your favorite thing that you do with your family every week? What is your favorite hobby that you participate in? What is your favorite thing about yourself? Instead of what do you do in your 9 to 5?
Yeah. We really allow that to construct who the individual is. I remember I had a situation when I was working in a gym. I saw a lady whose daughter I was in high school with. And her daughter was valedictorian, very smart, very intelligent. And I knew the family well. We got along well when I saw them. And the lady saw me working. I was standing at the front desk of the gym, and she came up to me and she was like, Daron, what are you doing here? I thought you were going to be this. I wanted to be a physical therapist at one point in time.
Yeah, me too.
So here I am at the front desk in a gym, and that's perfectly fine. I'm present where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
But she came to me. She's like, what happened? I thought you were, as though I had failed. And I was like, no, this is where I want to be. This is where I should be.
I chose this.
I chose this. And I think it's so important to kind of get that nailed into our mind that we are not what our job is, or we are not what we are even in school. People who may be in undergraduate, grad school, high school, wherever you are in life, you don't have to put your whole character, put your whole who you are into your job. And we saw that this was really an unfortunate, this had an unfortunate effect on people in this pandemic, where they lost their jobs, they got furloughed or they got laid off, or they, jobs went under.
Their self-concept changed.
And their whole self-concept changed. It's like, okay, I have no job. Now I have to focus on this intellectual thing. Who is my social circle that I've probably neglected because of work?
Am I taking care of myself?
Am I taking care of myself physically?
Self-care was big.
Yeah, self-care was huge. Where's my mental state? Why do I suddenly feel more anxious? And, why has my stress gone through the roof more than what I thought? Because we put our whole stock in this thing that is our occupational wellness. So like you said, it's not about what I do, it's what I bring to what I do.
Yes.
If I leave, I could lose that job tomorrow. I still have.
You still have who you are.
I still have who I am.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
My favorite thing to ask people when I'm trying to get to know them is, tell me one thing about yourself that I don't know. And that opens the door for them to share something that's really important to them about who they are.
Yeah.
And generally it's not their job.
There you go. There you go. And this kind of brings us into our final two, but we're going to get to this first one, which is the environmental wellness.
Environmental wellness.
So being able to take care of the world around you as a whole.
And it's not just trees, people.
The most common, as you just mentioned, is awareness of the environmental change and your personal impact on the earth and your surroundings. So you have to kind of like take that introspective look. The little things, obviously. Am I recycling? Am I not littering? Am I putting trash where it belongs? Maybe am I myself reusing trash? I know that like my grandparents, they'll eat like fresh fruit and they have a garden in the back. Rather than just throw the stuff in the trash, they compost.
I love that.
So waste not, what not, as people say.
Right. We got to think about your surroundings in total when we talk about this kind of wellness. So it's not just outside. You're surrounded by the place that you live, your work. So it also kind of comes back to a little bit of occupational wellness, the people that you surround yourself with, even maybe the route that you take to get to work, your grocery store, like all places that you come in contact with during the day, you have the ability to make a change.
Absolutely. I think it is just being mindful of the fact that the world is not at its healthiest state.
In a lot of ways.
In many ways, yeah. From an environmental standpoint, as we see, we have a lot of like forest fires. We have a lot of different types of...
a lot of inclement weather.
And things that are... And also, I was in New York City this past weekend.
Yeah. And
the difference between living out here in the Midwest and living in the city where it's just buildings is different in terms of just the fresh air, So all of these different types of things kind of play into how we are in desperate need to take care of the environment around us. One thing that I instantly think of is, we're driving, giving off gases that are maybe harmful to the air. What can I do instead? Can I maybe walk? Can I maybe bike? Do I need to go all the way out here if I don't have to? Trying to take more calculated routes of travel, but also taking more calculated routes of environmental wellness, as we said.
Yeah. Can I combine things? We have a lot of people who work remotely from home now. Can you do that a few days a week instead of going to the office? You might really enjoy that a lot more. A lot of people have. And that helps you to save money as well. So there is almost a piece of like financial wellness that comes into this. And if you know anything about the wellness wheel that a lot of colleges use, they, instead of having 7 pillars of wellness, incorporate 8 different types of wellness into this wheel. And they always include financial, probably because it's college and everyone's really stressed because they're going into debt. But that is a piece to think about as well. And I think it fits really well here in environmental, because a lot of these things that we can change do have an impact on our financial well-being.
Yeah.
That is a part of your surroundings.
Yeah, it's simply responsibility.
Yes.
Are you handling your business? Are you doing your part to keep the environment around you well? Are you
safe, clean? Do you keep your home safe and clean?
Yes.
Your car, is the inside of it clean? Can you find things that you need to find when you need them?
Yeah, and I think of also when you mentioned the financial side of things, like, are we using our money in a wise way that contributes to the limiting of the environment's stressors, or are we contributing to it? In a way, are we investing in things that can help us to drop those stressors? So
are we being
rather than just wasteful buying, wasteful spending, I think we just talked about this, even going all the way back to the physical pillar, how that influences the environmental pillar. Am I buying fresh food versus canned and boxed food that's going to be thrown away, recycled, maybe burned up and go into the atmosphere or something? Am I
going to farmers markets? Am I utilizing meats that are local?
Yeah.
Am I buying vegetables that are local? You know, these things definitely do matter. They financially impact the community that you directly participate in, but also really help to decrease on things like harmful chemicals that may be used by bigger companies. So all of that has a massive environmental impact. Yeah,
it comes down to the way that we can put this down into one word of how we take care of our environment is service. You know, community service, but overall service. And that really is how we can make all of these pillars to make more sense, is this aspect of service.
Yeah, and you can do one thing. It could maybe just be that one thing, but you did it.
Yeah, and it's a daily thing. Again, you know, you'll see, I think it's, as they say, see a need and fill a need. As soon as you see it, go and do something about it. Don't limit yourself to just like, I did my one thing and now I don't have to do for the next 3 to 4 weeks. You know, you did your one thing for the day or whatever it presented itself. Now you see the next thing. Go out there and take care of it.
It's like holding a door open for one person and you see like 3 more coming and you're like, really, do I have to stand and wait and hold the door open for all of these other people?
Yeah, because we're all in this together.
Right. And stand there and hold the door.
You're trying to make a world that is safe. You're trying to make an environment that is safe for not just yourself currently, but for generations that may come after you. Yes. It's not about you. It's about the collective, right?
Man, and how does that feed into social wellness? So good. It's connected.
It's all connected. Whew. And this brings us to our final pillar.
We're here.
Which is the spiritual wellness. This is kind of where we'll a curveball will come in, and we'll discuss that in a second. But the spiritual wellness is, when you kind of look it up on Google, the answer that you get of like, what is spiritual wellness? It's really just why.
Yeah.
And it's not why, like, why do you want to know? But it is literally why. Yeah. The why.
That's big.
Living out your beliefs in a sense that is to, you know, allow who you are to be worn on the sleeve, as they say.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean.
What do you believe?
Yeah. But it doesn't mean that you're limited to something of a particular like religion or denomination. But it involves a self-reflection, an integrity, honesty, and how we treat others.
Honesty. Oof.
You know, it's finding purpose, value, and meaning in your life. Participating in activities that are consistent with your beliefs and values.
This is the grit of who you are.
Yeah. This is something that I've oftentimes found to be so necessary, where we truly don't know what we believe.
Or we let other people change what we believe constantly. Like it's fluid and shifting, which, I mean, in a healthy sense, probably some of those things do shift, but you shouldn't, you know, change your religion every other day, you know?
Right, yeah. It's more so just a, you know, as we talk about this intellectual wellness, being okay with being wrong and being okay with new light and new understanding to move in a direction that progresses you deeper in your beliefs. But a lot of people, you can't, when you ask them why they do what they do, they may give you something that is, in a sense, they'll give you a substantial answer. They'll give you something that is legitimate. So they may say, like, what is your why? Most people will say, my family, or my children, or my parents, my spouse, you know. And I think that that is a beautiful thing. I think that that is a great motivation. But where do the values of that family come from? Okay, well, it came from your grandparents or something like that. So you're trying to carry on a legacy. Well, where does that legacy come from? It keeps asking this, why or where does this stem from? And this is why I find that the spiritual pillar is so essential because many times you'll hear people say things like, well, I'm not really religious, but I'm spiritual. And I have to say that is not so much a thing as it really doesn't have something of direction. I'm not saying that
it's not rooted in much.
It's not rooted in much. Exactly. It's kind of just, I take what I take and I just kind of go with the flow, but rather it's like having a spiritual connection is the fundamental and essential thing of how people function, how people move, and how people believe. Yeah.
No matter what you believe, having a strong set of beliefs is important because that's going to filter into every single decision that you make. So if you don't have, it comes back to the self-concept. If you don't have that strong self-concept and that strong set of beliefs where you can diagram them, like you could list them out if somebody asks you to, where is your decision-making coming from?
Yeah. And it's funny because we made the physical pillar the fundamental thing.
Yeah, the first one we talked about.
It, the first drop of, this is it. You take a stone and we drop it into the water and there's this ripple effect. So the first ring, we get the physical. The next ring, we get the emotional. The social is the next. And it takes us all the way
deeper and deeper and deeper
to the biggest ring, which is the spiritual pillar. But here's the kind of strange concept that's dropped in. That stone is the spiritual that's been dropped in to the water.
Yeah.
Because you function according to your belief. Let's look at our Muslim brothers and sisters. They function, everything kind of goes according to what they believe, following
all their
strictly all of their actions. What are they eating? Their diet, their emotional and mental well-being. Who do they turn to? Their social. Who do they keep company with? Their intellectual. How are they growing their knowledge, but also how are they challenging themselves as a community and as a group?
Right.
Their occupational, all of these different types of things.
It's very apparent.
Exactly. So then when you see somebody, you say, that person is whatever, they are a Muslim or something like that. And as a Christian, this is something that I've always really felt was so important with the spiritual wellness pillar is a Christian should not have to identify themselves.
Yeah.
And people may not even have to be like, oh yeah, that person over there, that's a Christian. But rather it's like, there's something that's different about you, especially because of maybe people who claim to be something and they don't exactly represent what one would think. So many people say, oh yeah, I'm Christian, but you're something else before you're a Christian.
Well, a person, I think, just standing strong in their belief sets themselves apart. You look at that person and know that they're different, regardless of what that belief is. So that's especially true.
And it's attractive.
It is. People are like, wow, that person really is in tune with themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. I want to be like that.
Exactly. And so that brings us to this final bit is ultimately when it comes to that spiritual pillar, it is having a true, substantial and solid belief system and then living it out in all aspects of life. And that actually helps us to more clearly see how we are to physically take care of ourselves, how we are to emotionally and mentally take care of ourselves and others, how we are to socially interact with other people, how we are to intellectually build up our mind and not fill our minds with just anything, but how we are to build up our mind and character.
Our spiritual pillar almost becomes less of a pillar and it becomes like the foundation of the house.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to that point of what is the point of a pillar? We're talking about pillars. We're talking about pillars.
We're getting deep into this metaphor.
Pillars have no purpose if they're not doing something.
Right.
Holding
something up.
Yeah. I take a pen and I stand it up, it's going to tip over and fall. Right. But unless the pen has something of a foundation that can hold it in its place, but also has something that it's holding up, then that is what a pillar's function is. And what's interesting is we looked it up. What exactly is a pillar? We just went on Google.
Yes.
Okay, so take it with a pinch of salt.
Very highly researched.
This is what you get right away. It says a pillar transmits the weight of a structure above it to other structures below it through compression As a result, pillars have played a large role in allowing mankind to build higher structures and taller buildings that do not collapse under their own weight.
You could be building a real tall building if that foundation is strong.
You could. And we talked about these 7 pillars. And what their purpose is to hold the weight. What is this rooftop that is sitting on top of the pillars?
Oh, tell us.
It's you. Your 7 pillars hold you up. They keep you from crumbling and collapsing. And we've seen...
Man. Yeah, not your family, not your spouse, you.
Yeah, we've seen in today's world, unfortunately, I think COVID really opened up a lot of eyes to this wellness continuum and how, wow, we really are struggling as a society and as people. We see that as soon as COVID hit, what happened? The occupational pillar collapsed because you don't have a job. Mm-hmm. Now, other pillars who are maybe not as strong as the occupational pillar, they have to bear the weight of you. And there's nothing that it can stand on. So boom, there goes my mental, emotional. Boom, there goes my social. All
you're
of these
stressed.
Different types of things.
Yep.
You're stressed.
Maybe you're not sleeping. Your gym closed.
Yeah. And so, but we talk about, okay, so we have you established, and below it we have 7 pillars to hold you up. You cannot put the 7 pillars on some quicksand or on some very, that's on a foundation that is not
malleable
solid.
Foundation.
Yeah, on a malleable.
You got a crack in your foundation. There is water in your basement.
That's a good way of putting it. Exactly. You don't want to put yourself on a weak foundation.
Yeah.
And what is that foundation that we have to stand on? A lot of times we ask ourselves these questions, you know, if I lost my job, what would I have? People say, I have my family. And you can lose your family, unfortunately. Yeah. I know of a situation where people who have had their whole family is all that they have, and they've lost it from natural disasters to tragedies that just make no sense.
Who are you?
Who are you? What do you have to stand on? And it can't be yourself. You can't hold you up. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Your foundation, your solid, unbreakable foundation is in the Lord himself. God is the foundation because he's established each and every one of us for a good work. It's not for something to just bring ourselves joy and only ourselves and self. He established to build us up so that we can go and help build other people's pillars up for themselves.
That's really kind of beautiful.
And that's exactly how we solidify our pillars, is by serving others, by taking care of others, by seeing others, and by doing things for the sake of helping others understand who they are, what their foundation is, how they can take care of their pillars, and how they themselves can withstand any sort of pressure, disaster, or anything that comes.
Yeah.
Now, granted, let's be honest, it doesn't mean that it's all smooth sailings. You're gonna, your occupational pillar will probably collapse. You'll lose your job tomorrow. You may lose a friend or a family of your social circle.
Come back to your system of belief.
Come back to the foundation.
Yeah.
And what's really, what it starts is it stems in the foundation. It lights up through the spiritual pillar. And it bleeds into all the other pillars, so that your influence so that your beliefs influence all of those 7 pillars.
Everything that you do.
In. Exactly. And then when one thing may be a little bit weak or shaky or cracks start to form, go back to the root. When you go back to the root, you're empowered to go ahead and help build up.
Make the change. Make the fix.
And what other way is there for us to find out more about this? It is in the Bible. A book that has been many times scrutinized, a book that has been many times questioned. But I can tell you firsthand, I promise you, if you open the book for yourself and read it for yourself, every single pillar of wellness that we've discussed here is mentioned in that book, and it is given practical, simple, and actually encouraging steps on how to carry ourselves, but also how to be something for somebody so that they can build up their wellness pillars.
We just built a nice row of really pretty houses.
Exactly. And so
I love it.
This brings us to our conclusion.
Yeah.
We've established these 7 pillars. This is what we wanted to do for this episode.
Mm-hmm. Which some of you probably made a list as we went through all these 7 things, and you're thinking about everything that you're doing wrong. So don't approach it from that standpoint. You're not just suddenly going to fix all 7 pillars of wellness at one time and become the most incredible version of yourself there ever has been or ever will be. And some of you actually checked out like the 3rd pillar. You were like, this is just too much. I can't do this anymore. Now you're stressed. You don't even want to try because all these pieces just seem so overwhelming. It's not about that, right? We talked about that foundation. We talked about, starting at the bottom and everything else kind of follows. And even more important than that, your brain can't focus on every single pillar at once. Mm-hmm. It's actually not physically possible. Multitasking, any woman will tell you they can do it. It's real. It exists. Physically, when you get down to the science of what happens in your brain, multitasking is impossible. Mm-hmm. You cannot physically focus on doing 2 things at once. So how are you going to focus on doing 7 at once? That is wild. So find that focus, that small thing that maybe you need to dive in and be a little bit introspective and see where those holes are, where we're missing some things, and then let it challenge the rest of you. Let it challenge the rest of your self-concept, what you're doing, what you're seeing. You're not going to perfect every single thing, but all of these pillars bleed into each other.
It's a day-by-day thing.
Yeah.
For the next 2 weeks.
Let it be that way.
I may have to really give strong attention to my intellectual pillar, and then for the next 3 days after that, I have to really focus on this emotional pillar. Yeah. It's a continuous thing. Mm-hmm. I think of, in a kind of a funny way, we live in Dayton, and there's this kind of running joke that I-75 in Dayton is never fixed.
Oh my gosh.
By the time they get to the end, they start over at the beginning.
Now you're going to be stressing people out.
And so it's the same, it's a similar way of knowing, one, obviously it doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. The work continues, but it's more positive than the construction on I-75.
Yeah.
And life happens. So you're going to have little stress cracks in the pillars, and you're going to have different types of things that it's like, I need attention here. And then once you get done here, then you have to get to this pillar.
Yeah.
But it is achievable. It's not that you have to be like, oh, I can't do anything. As well.
You don't need to excel at everything.
You don't have to excel right away. Take baby steps, take the small steps, do what you can right now and allow it to build up your motivation to go forward and to keep on pursuing this thing of wellness, not just the absence of infirmity or the absence of anxiety or different types of things, but allow it to build us up. When you're well, keep seeking to be more well.
Be in pursuit of who you are. Absolutely. As the most well version of yourself.
And the last thing that kind of comes to my mind when you mentioned how people probably listened to this and felt like, whoa, I'm really, really behind.
I am so messed up.
Allow the limitations that you see to bring you liberty. This is a start of your wellness journey. You see something that you're like, whoa, I thought I knew or I thought I was doing, but I wasn't. That is taking us all the way back to what we started with. Wellness is an awareness, an introspection, and a retrospection. When you bring those together, allow it to drive you forward. Don't allow it to cause you to sit and wallow in what you are not, because you can become. That's the bottom line. Mm-hmm.
And it's ultimately not doing, it's being. You can just be who you are. You don't need to do X, Y, Z to be who you are. You already are that.
Absolutely. Well, Dani, we have to quit today.
We just got so deep.
But folks, for the future, every episode is going to fall under one of these pillars.
Right. It's all important. So this is a lot to take in, but I think a lot to think about. Even in working on this, we found a lot of encouragement in the things that we do. And I think about my life, I think a little bit differently after having discussions about this particular episode of the podcast. So I hope that it is encouraging to you. I hope that it does push you to want to be better than you were yesterday.
Absolutely. And we're going to keep, as we add experts, we ourselves are growing in this journey with you. So we're not looking to teach you, rather we're looking to be taught, and hopefully you can learn something along with us.
Let's be better together.
Exactly. So with that, thank you for hearing us today on the Know Better, Be Better podcast. I'm Daron Raynor.
And I'm Dani Ondreka. And we hope you have a wonderful and blessed rest of your day. Stay well.